Welcome. This is one of our public meetings. We have many scheduled. If you are in the calexitnow.org email list of 45,000 people, then here's my buddy. Rabbi, how you doing?
I'm awesome. How you doing? I just came to say hi. It's been so long.
It's been so long.
Is there something wrong with your camera? I'm seeing a little white over here.
I've gotten older. I have definitely gotten older.
I tell my wife I'm looking for a new mirror.
The rabbi has been a friend of Calexit out of New York City for many, many, many years, and we always appreciate him. How are you doing? How's things over there?
Oh, we love New York. Why don't you take our mayor?
Oh, I'm not going to get into it. He has a different vibe out here in California. We're so pseudo-socialist, but
do they like him out there? Would they want him?
Well, this place loved AOC. Right?
Oh, okay.
So AOC is not from California, but she was really well liked here. Additionally, Bernie Sanders was from here. Well, Bernie Sanders was not from here. Sorry, my brain's not working today. Bernie Sanders was really well liked in California, and his 2016 campaign was largely energized by California voters. So he was able to act like he was a national candidate because of the amount of support he had in California. So we're a little bit liberal out here.
See, this is why I want to divorce you, Marcus.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't understand when you were on our podcast why they didn't get that.
Can I come back on the podcast? I had a great time talking with you guys.
Yeah, I want you to come back when I'm there. They just totally missed the point. We love you because we hate you because we love you because we hate you. It's the perfect. Listen, you want the people we don't want. We want the people you don't want. What could be better than this? So
that's why, and just for everybody following along, so I do a lot of conservative podcasts. I am liberal. I am for Calexit, but the reason that I do that is we have to get the votes. So you're going to need to be able to talk to people. And Daniel and Rick, your devices aren't connected. If they are, I'll let you in the studio. We'll take questions from anybody. But part of what we've been doing for the last decade is reaching out to conservatives outside of California. And the reason that we've been doing that is what the rabbi showed. The rabbi's out of New York City. And he's like, hey, you guys like stuff we don't like, so we'll let you leave. And we could be happier together, right? If we had a peaceful divorce, right?
I consider you a real buddy, Marcus.
I love
you're
you.
Like a brother from another planet, And I just don't get it. Staten Island is making a little bit of noise that they'd like to leave the city. I wish that could happen. But to me, the states have to split up. I have no doubt about it. And I said before Trump won, if you guys can't pull it off now, you're never going to pull it off.
It's now so I have to keep saying this. I don't like chaos and people being sad, but it's never been a better time for Calexit.
No, this is it, man.
Yeah. The reasoning and stuff. Actually, while I got you, and you're on the other side of the coast. Okay, yep. So this is the Calexit meeting. By the way, anybody here who has any questions, Rick, Daniel, Margaret, anybody, if you type the questions in on the chat or the private chat or the notes, I'll get it, and I will make sure everybody will have a meeting every week to answer any questions from anybody on this. But Rabbi, while I got polls and just get your honest reaction.
Okay, do I have a choice? Can I give you my dishonest reaction?
You can give me your dishonest reaction.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, I just listened to an hour-long documentary on the creation of the Torah. Fascinating.
Don't believe the word they say, though.
Oh, what's the word they say?
Whatever they say, it's BS, but that's okay. Whenever I watch anything Jewish on TV, I'm like, I can't even believe the stuff people say. But that's the way it goes. Okay, what's your honest question? You only
first of all, Mary's here. So, Mary, let me ask you. You're here. I got to take questions from the public first, and then I'll ask you.
No
Rabbi.
problem.
We lost Mary. So you don't have to be on camera if you want. You can ask questions in private chat, and I'll take them. And we'll go. Anyways, here we go. We're going to ask the rabbi. He is in New York City. He's not a Californian. He definitely supports us. He likes us, but he thinks, hey, you guys like some people I wouldn't be backing up. And okay, Laura, Mary, Daniel, Rick, thanks for coming out. If you have any questions, you can come on or just type them in the chat and I'll answer them. But right now I'm going to ask the rabbi who's from New York City, and he's been knowing Calexit for many years, known me for years. He's not a Californian, but he supports our right to leave, right? He thinks it'd be better if we had a more peaceful divorce. So let me ask you, Rabbi, did you see this poll from New York Times?
I don't think so, because I try not to read that rag. I may have caught wind of the story. This is so cool. This is after Charlie Kirk.
Yes. I want to come on the show again. What's the day that you normally do the show and you're there?
It's always Wednesday. The week of Thanksgiving is iffy. Maybe we should look at the week after that or the week after that. Definitely.
Okay, Wednesday
From my
evening.
point of view, you're always welcome. So
I love you guys, and this is what I want people to see is like, look, I want to live in California, and I like the way that we do things, and I know that
they couldn't understand that you're different than they are. They kept trying to convince you you're the same.
You saw that.
I was very upset about that because they totally missed the point. They're trying to convert you.
You saw it. Like I talked to the guy, and he's like, "You're one of us. Why don't you just move here?" And I go, "You know,"
I was like, I'm screaming. Wait, he's a freaking liberal. What are you, crazy?
I like transgender people walking around. I like people speaking languages I don't understand.
They totally missed the point.
I believe in climate change. It was really sweet. It was very tender and very sweet that they were like, "Hey, move here," and then I had to go.
They missed the point.
Okay, yes, I believe in low taxes and low regulations, but all the other crazy Cali stuff, I'm here to eat it. I love it.
I love you anyway, but if we lived in the same house, we'd probably get into arguments.
We would. But hey, I have relatives. This is my analogy. I have relatives from Texas, and I love them, and they're great. But they come out here, 2 days is enough. We go out to Texas, 3 to 5 days is enough. Hey, I'll visit, and I love you, but living in Texas, no. And their idea, we took them out to San Francisco. After 2 days, they were like, "We're ready to go back. Love you guys. It's been great. We're ready to go back. You guys are great, but hell no, I don't want to live in this place." And we're like, "This is the best place in the world." They're like, "No, quiet Texas with steak and Bibles and guns."
This country had the right idea. States. It was such a good idea.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, coming from the conservative side, here's the thing that got me about this one, Rabbi, is this was not the day that Charlie Kirk was killed. By the way, political assassinations are wrong, are bad. I am not one of the liberals.
You don't have to say that, Marcus. You know what? You really don't have to say that to me.
I know. I just put it out there just because
it drives me crazy, that we even have to say such a dumb thing.
Well, that's where we're at, though, because there were some liberals who celebrated his death.
I know.
I did not look. I wasn't a fan of him, but you're celebrating a person's death. Look, I'm not going to get into it. I didn't
celebrate him leaving the country and retiring. But you shouldn't be celebrating. It's ridiculous that we even have.
I didn't celebrate. I did not think he was a wonderful man, but I didn't celebrate. I don't think it's appropriate to celebrate things like that in politics. But here's what got me. This wasn't the day after he was killed. This was 2 weeks after. This poll is not talking about to Americans, hey, somebody was killed in politics. It's saying, how do you feel about the reaction of everybody after that death? This is the right reacting to the left and the left reacting to the right. This is after liberals made fun of his death. This is after, from our perspective, the right kind of said, you have to celebrate him the way that we think, and you can't say things about him we don't like. And that really pissed off the left. So somebody's dead. America did not come together. What happened was the left and right really started becoming disgusted with each other. And that's when they took this poll. What grabs me is if you go back to 2020, 42% said the problems are too divided. 60% of the country in 2020 said, no, we can get past this. 2025, 5 years later, it's now 64% of Americans say the country is too divided to come back together. 2 weeks after Charlie Kirk's assassination. Again, not about his death, about the reaction of we have.
It's a little frustrating to people like me and you who've been screaming this for 10 years.
Right.
Really just like, welcome. There's a few times on my podcast where some of the people have said, maybe we can't make it as a country. And I'm like, oh my God, you're finally getting the point.
um, uh, yeah. I mean,
I'm,
that's
I'm the only one I know in my world who refuses to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I get flack for it. And I say, I'm not going to say the words indivisible. Sorry.
well, yeah. Out here in California, we had a liberal who got rid of the Pledge of Allegiance here like 10 years ago. So it's not an issue, but that shows you where.
In my world, your bona fides are because you pledge your allegiance to the country. And I said it on my podcast, no country lasts forever. Why does America, as it is, have to last 100,000 years? No country lasts forever. Now we can't get along. Let's just break up peacefully. That's right. I'm out of the issue for a long time because it was going nowhere, and now I'm hoping you guys will leave us in peace, man.
So I just want to
I'll
say,
pay for your moving truck.
Yeah. Well, let me address a few points here, real quick. So for everybody in the chat, I am a liberal. I am a fan of diversity and science. I totally back California things, and I'm not asking for sympathy for Charlie Kirk at all. I'm not. I'm totally bona fide. I talk to conservatives outside of California because if we want to legally leave, we have to get votes from them. I also think they'll give us the votes because of this. Rabbi, I'm sure you've seen this poll. This came out last year. Half of Republicans don't think anybody here in California is American. So this is last year. This is I think we can get the votes from Republicans. I think it's just us in California because this poll doesn't exist for New York City or Chicago as much as those are liberal cities. It's here in California where it's half of Republicans across all of America view everybody in California as not American. And
when push comes to shove, the problem is going to be, according to my genius, which is obviously irrefutable since it's mine, is Americans would be happy to let California go. Politicians all want to rule the world. And no senator doesn't want to be president of the world. And he doesn't want to give that up. And most egomaniacs in Congress think, if only I were in charge, I could fix this. And that's the worry for me. I think if you had a plebiscite of the country, I think a heck of a lot of people would say, let him go. But I don't see politicians doing it. Even though it would give them a lot more power. But, and some people say they just don't want to be the ones responsible for breaking up the country.
I can see that. I can see that where you have. So, I mean, that's the point is that this is why we talk to conservatives is we want to let them know. First, I want to let Californians know the votes are there. Because I debate with some California liberals and they're like, we couldn't really go. And I'm like, they hate us. They would easily allow us.
What's so sad for me is why can't people hate you like I hate you?
Exactly. Why hate me in a way you want me to leave? Yes.
Why can't we all just talk? We literally on the same side of this. We don't want to live with each other. Why do we? You have to curse me out. I got to curse you out. We got to.
Yeah.
Why? You're the only one I know that's so normal about this.
And I'm good friends with Daniel Miller, but every time I tell people, I go, look, we don't share values. He's a good guy. I can recognize that there are good people who I don't want to live in Russia. I don't want to live in China. I don't want to live in North Korea. I know I've met Chinese people who are happy living in China. They know their government isn't fully free. They have a new car and a house. They're great. That's great, man. I'll visit. I want to visit China. I don't want to live there. I wouldn't want to spend my life there. I like what we have in California. And so my attitude is you have that over there. Like I tell Daniel, like, there's no way that so guns and church and religion and military are very big in Texas. They're just not here in California. I don't want to live there. At the same time, he's like, I don't want to live in a place with all these people speaking foreign languages. And I go, well, that feels normal to me.
I thought they did speak 4 languages in Texas.
They do, but they're not so big on it. Here in California, we love immigrants.
I got to tell you something. I'm not going to complain because it'll make you happy. But everywhere I go, we spend a lot of time in Virginia now that Holly moved down there. It's like 20 minutes south of D.C.
Yeah.
You don't hear English anywhere anymore. There's no more assimilation in this country, whether it's good or bad. There is none. And I don't think it bodes well for the country because there's no more Americanism, whatever that used to mean. So it's everywhere with the multilingual. Alu speaks fluent Spanish, but and it helps him a lot. But yeah.
Again, love Alu. Same thing. He's a conservative. He's out of New Hampshire. They have, or well, he moved to Virginia.
We're in Virginia, yeah.
And same thing. And it's because we've been trying to get these votes. And part of it is initially, when I was here in 2016, there were liberals in California saying, you can't get the votes. They'll never let you go. And I think it's exactly like what you said. There's some elites who may not want that. But if we're actually talking to the American people, I think the American people have spoken. And we could easily get enough votes to let us go. I don't think this would be that hard. I also point out this survey here. This came out right before Prop 50 was voted for. So California passed Prop 50 by huge margins, like 63, 64%. And this is what I find interesting. This was a poll taken 2 weeks before Prop 50 was voted on. 63%, 2/3 of everyone here feels that we are treated worse than any other place in America. The percentage of people who voted for Prop 50 here in California, 64%, basically. So this poll almost perfectly matches the vote for Prop 50. The percentage of people who feel we're hated worse than anywhere else was the percentage of people who voted for Prop 50. And here in California, and I'm not asking you to agree, but in California, this was for real. Obama came out, and Obama, this shocked people. This shocked me. Obama said the whole country's counting on you. And I go, let me get this right. The president of America said, if California, one state, doesn't pass this one vote, all of America is going to fall apart. And I said, does that sound like stability? I'm not asking you to be liberal, but just a former president comes to one state and says, boy, it's all up to you guys in this one state, this one vote, or the whole thing's over. Taking a step back, does that sound like he thinks the American project's stable?
Yeah. If you listened to my podcast from last week, there was a 10-minute rant against Trump. He would have, I mean, just explosive, unbelievable. Listen, I only have a minute or two. I'm kind of thinking, I'm not a lot of use to you, but I'm wondering if I could be of use to you when you have the opportunity to talk to conservatives. Yeah. Could I help you make a bridge with them?
Yes.
To show them how we can hate and love you at the same time, not yell at each other. That's what I would love to do. And maybe I can make an impact that way.
That's why I like working with you and Dan and all the others, is that we can say, look, we don't have to yell. We've already made the decision. It's not going to work out. Let's just have a peaceful divorce.
And I got to tell you something. You're a damn nice guy, Marcus.
I'll get you the money after the show.
Yeah, thank you. Bitcoin. Maybe we could do shows like that once in a while where people who don't agree with you, maybe I can help with that.
Don't agree.
Californians who deal with you think I'm nuts, and that's fine, because that's why I want to divorce you guys, and that's fine.
I still believe this is the right idea, because I guess it comes from my childhood. I didn't like my parents getting divorced initially, but here's the thing that got me. All my friends' parents got divorced, and I heard all their stories, and they were horrible. Parents were like stealing each other's cars, slashing tires, calling each other at 4 a.m. to make sure they can't wake up, taking the kids and disappearing for a weekend, yelling and screaming at each other. My parents, for as bad as they were, never did any of that. They said, it's over. We're done. We didn't really see them yelling and screaming at each other. My brother and I weren't kidnapped for 2 days. No property destruction. And I'm thinking,
you had it good. I've been involved in some really, really bad ones.
Right.
But we don't have kids together, me and you, Marcus. At least not. We're going to admit that we do. So we can separate very happily, and we can even come together on holidays and have a beer if I drank beer.
I'm just saying, I have seen horrible divorces, and I've seen reasonable divorces where they're like, look, it's over. We don't have to destroy each other.
Totally reasonable, because we don't need an ongoing relationship of raising somebody. And I'm so sick of hearing, how can we live without California? We won't be able to trade with them. We won't be able to go to all the questions you've been answering for 15 years. Like, come on. Like, we can't go to Canada. It's all BS. Anyway, I'm gonna run. I'm so happy to catch up with you, Marcus. Let me know what I can do. Okay.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Good luck, my
All right.
friend. Bye.
Here's another comment from one of our members. I'm very glad to hear it passed within those margins. That's right. Prop 50 passed by huge margins here in California. And I don't think this is a coincidence. The percentage of support for Prop 50 almost perfectly matches the percentage of Californians who felt we're uniquely hated in all of America. I don't find that a coincidence. This poll came out 2 weeks before the vote, and I think it says everything. Because when they talked to people about Prop 50 and they interviewed Californians and they asked, is this a referendum? Is this about Trump? Almost everybody said, yeah. Like this was our way. And here's the great thing as a liberal. Trump was offended. He did not expect Prop 50 to pass like that. He got spanked and he was mad. As I did a show on it, but before the vote even came out, Trump was like, "Oh, it's rigged. I'm like, bro, they haven't even asked people to vote yet. Before they even started counting votes or people voting, he was like, it's rigged. I'm like, vote hasn't even started yet, and you're already like, oh, it's rigged. I'm like, why are you saying that? He did not want Prop 50 to pass. They didn't think California was going to do it. And then we did, and that shocked the hell out of them. They thought Californians were going to complain and say this is a threat, and, that's sad. They didn't think that we'd actually jerry-rig the map to counter what Texas was doing in order to achieve a level of balance again. They didn't expect that, and they didn't expect the high margins, and that shocked the hell out of them. But again, this comes with this. By the way, keep posting. This comes from one of our members here. I'm very glad to hear it pass with those margins. This is the first time hearing about it. Also, from the same comment, here's from another commenter here in the studio. Talking about the rabbi, and yeah, he's lost faith in California, wouldn't have it any other way. And that's, again, I'm not saying we should be conservative. What I want to show is that we can have a peaceful divorce. We don't have to tear each other apart. Look, they don't want to be us. We don't want to be them. One of the, he was talking about a conservative show that I went on, and it always catches the conservatives off guard because I am an ex-Republican, and I think they pick up on that. By the way, I left with Romney, not Trump. I left with Romney 4 years before Trump, before anyone ever heard of Trump. And I said the Republican Party is going to go racist. Why? They lost their entire Latino percentage of the vote. And they go, that's it. They're not interested in brown-skinned people. They're going to do something else. And that was 4 years before Trump. But I wanted to show that we could get the votes. We could work with people. It doesn't have to be violent or angry or scary. They're ready to let us go. This is an excellent question, Daniel. Please post some really hot questions like this. This is really, really good. So this is a great question. If you have any hard-hitting questions, you're watching this on YouTube. If you type it in the comment bar on YouTube, it'll pop up here. Or if you're in the studio, you can ask questions and we'll be able to do it. So I'm going to address this question here. This is what we're here for. This right here, to answer questions. I can't foresee our neighbor states breaking many deals with us if we separated. Nevada and California have a pretty tight water power relationship, as example. That's exactly it. So when we talk to independents, when we talk to people who are critics of Calexit, they're like, well, there'll be a wall and there'll be two opposing militaries, and they're thinking the Cold War. They're thinking that separation independence has to mean that we'll have a Cold War with a wall and separate militaries on both sides, and there won't be trade or no. California has pushed America since the 1930s to make every single world trade deal it has. That's not well known. We got America to do world trade, not the other way around, since the 1930s and William Randolph Hearst. NAFTA, pushed by Californians, written by Californians. The rework of NAFTA, pushed by Californians, written by Californians. So all of the trade deals we pushed and we implemented. We're the experts in. We were the Americans, although don't consider us that, who actually made that happen. When California is separate from America, if there was any pushback, California just has to back NAFTA. All we have to do is say we're still part of NAFTA that was renegotiated with America. That means we automatically have trade deals with America, Canada, and Mexico. So the idea that you're not a state now, so you can't trade, was destroyed by things like international trade agreements like NAFTA. NAFTA makes the barriers to trade between Mexico, Canada, and America as reduced as between two states. That's the whole idea. You want trade to move faster, so they have these access points. If California is part of NAFTA, we have no trade impasse. And why would we not want to continue to trade and do business with America? People in California are upset about their rights being threatened, the right to protest, the right to not be confiscated, to be thrown into a prison, disappeared, to have clean air and water, to support our diverse values. Many people in California who are upset at what's going on aren't talking about, I really am upset about the percentage of the water negotiation from 1966. Or I'm upset about the power sharing agreement we have with these other. That's not what's happening. It's about protecting rights. So we can keep all of these agreements with America, with other states, with other countries in NAFTA. Nobody's going to be bothered about it, and it would keep the whole thing cogent and moving along in one piece. Any other questions? Please post them. We'll put them up. This was another survey I wanted to show people here. This came out at the same time. So do people get along? This came out from the same survey that said, compared to other states, how well is the Trump administration treating California? Californians believe, 2/3 of them, that California is treated worse than any other place in America. Here's another survey that came out roughly around the same time. And it said, in the next few years, political violence in the USA will increase 68%. So almost 70% of Americans, as of October last month, think that political violence in America is going to increase. And 63% of Californians feel most of America, which backs Trump, hates us. So where do you think that political violence is going to fall? On us. Here's another poll, came out of the same booking of polls. Do most people get along? Well, only 38% said people don't get along. However, 62% said politics drives people apart, otherwise they'd be together. But here's the interesting thing. Look at the poll down below. Do you talk to people with other political views? Almost never. 60%. Okay, so this poll is saying, hey, everybody can get together, but politics drives us apart. Great. How many of you are working to get across that political divide? 60%. Not at all. So people are saying that politics drives people apart, and then they're also saying I'm doing nothing about it. That's why I put these two polls together. Politics is driving us apart, but I'm going to do absolutely nothing about it in my life, which means this statistic is probably going to stay. Political violence increasing. And again, here's this one. I just released a video I'm showing everybody. It's explaining the entire Calexit process. It shows primarily relies on this poll. 63% of us believe that Trump treats us worse than any other place. He's backed up by America. And last year, 48, basically half of all Republicans across all of America view everyone here in California, you, me, everybody in the studio, everybody commenting, anybody in California, definitely our governor, definitely Governor Brown, any of our elected officials, as not American. I want you to think about that. You're not American. Now, this poll included California Republicans who probably didn't have as harsh an opinion. So if you pull the California numbers out of this poll, you're probably looking at over half of Republicans said this. Here we go. Thank you. Another question. Here we go from the chat. We're going to post it in. We're going to post it in two different ones here. The prime example as well as a substantial. Okay. Hold on. Here's another question coming up for everybody. This is why we do this. Here's from somebody in the studio. Do you think separation would encourage some of our old and outdated laws to be revisited? Prime example, California doesn't regulate groundwater access very well, and Nestle has exploited a substantial amount. Excellent point. for decades. Just an example, any law that should be revised can be used for discussion. Brilliant point. Brilliant point. Yes. So I used to have the opinion that we wouldn't need to change too many laws. And I think to make a functional nation, you won't. However, we brought on JJ, and he's a political director now for Calexit. Now he's worked in Washington, D.C. for many years, teaches political science. He's met a lot of people, ran 67 campaigns, met Trump, met Biden, etc. Came out 2 months ago and said, Calexit's going to happen. I'm here. What he said is that you would have to revisit a lot of these. Now, we also did an interview with a group called Coalition of Oneness. Coalition of Oneness is a new group that's going to be launching in the next couple weeks. They also came out of nowhere and said, we back Calexit and we want in. And we said, well, the best way is to follow our plan. Our plan, by the way, is available to everybody. You call for a blue ribbon panel. We lobby the legislature, you call the legislature, and we demand a blue ribbon panel. We think that will cause everything to fall into place. Now, what we had to explain to them during the interview with Coalition of Oneness was they were asking about this because they were kind of a civil rights group and human empowerment group. And we said, you can't form a new nation without addressing problems from the past. If you look at Israel, and I'm not talking about current policies, I'm just talking about the historical forming together of Israel, 1960s, and you look at the formation of Singapore roughly around the same time. These are two small nations. They're also highly diverse, like California. They both had an epiphany stage where they said, okay, we're going to form a nation, but we can't just carry in the problems from old. So there were some issues, like in Israel, they implemented Hebrew. Everybody had to speak Hebrew. They weren't doing what had been allowed before, where you had multiple different languages. There were some other things. The idea was that if we're going to form a nation state, we can't bring all these old intractable problems in. You at least got to start with a clean slate. Now, it won't be perfect, but you should at least try. Same thing Singapore did. So I think we'd have to do it here. In California, yeah, we'd have to revisit some things like the groundwater. I'd also think we'd have to deal with some of our long-term problems, like the genocide against the indigenous, the removal of votes against Latin people, the removal of property against Asian people, and the segregation and racism against African Americans, in addition to some long-standing issues like groundwater. I think you would have to address those. I don't think you do a perfect job, but I think you'd have to make a good-hearted, serious effort to deal with those. For example, indigenous people aren't going to get all the land back. Should they? Yes. Is that reasonable? No. Latin people were denied the vote that formed California. Are we really going to be able to fix that all the way? No. Asian people had all sorts of property stolen. Chinese people had property stolen in San Francisco. There was a genocide against Chinese in the 1850s in San Francisco. Japanese had a lot of property stolen. They're not going to get it all back. Should we make a good faith effort to try to deal with those issues? Yes. You have to. You have to at least attempt to solve some of the long, intractable problems before you move forward. Otherwise, what you're telling everybody is we're going to form a nation state and it's going to be this great place for you, but it's going to have all the same problems you hated from before. That's why in Israel and Singapore, they had to do these epiphany projects, because you can't get people excited about a new nation state and say it's all the same garbage from last time. That just kills the whole attitude. So absolutely, yes. Yep. So here's another comment from Rick. And this is very Calexity. Yeah. Just like I think you saw they were talking about the rabbi. He's lost faith in California. Wouldn't have it any other way. Here's a totally different Calexit person making another comment. Give me a California passport and I'm totally okay with not being looked at as an American. One of the things that we talk about a lot here is when we talk to Californians, they all do that already. That's why I know Calexit will happen, is because there's already people acting independently. The state with the highest number of passports and the highest number of international travelers and the highest number of immigrants and the highest number of people from here traveling around and people from outside traveling around is here in California. By far. New York City is comparable, but New York City, and that's a city. This is a nation, state size. Everybody who is Californian and travels abroad has said, I don't call myself an American. I call myself a Californian. So we've heard that a million times over the last 15 years. So if people are saying, "Oh, do you back Calexit?" I don't know about that. When you travel abroad, do you claim to be an American? No. Do you claim to be a Californian? So, and you don't want to be associated with America? Yes. We've heard that from hundreds of people, and especially business class people like CEOs, high level people. They've already sold out. Nobody's from California is going abroad and saying, "I'm an American and I back America." That's not what's happening. They used to say I'm a Canadian because they didn't want the hate. Now they're saying I'm Californian. And what happens is we're hearing the story of when you say Californians, foreign people relax. You say American, they're aggressive. You say Californian, it's cool because we have a totally different rep. So we're already independently in the mind, especially amongst the world travelers. All right, a few more questions here. We have to work on wrongs. Yes. Thank you, Laura. Yes. Oh, let me fix this real quick. So absolutely, Laura, yes, we have to work on wrongs. And we would have to have, this is based upon Daniel's comment, we would have to have a revisit of the old wrongs. I don't want to get hopes up. We're not, for example, I'm part Indigenous. Calexit was the first organization in California to say that there was a genocide and some of the land should go back to those Indigenous tribes. I am proud of that. Additionally, we worked with many Indigenous tribes in that federal territory, and we did interviews with them on video asking if they want their land back. And they said, "You are the first non-native to ever ask us this." So in California, Calexit was so progressive. We were saying, give Native people their land back. Nobody ever said that on TV, and nobody ever approached the natives about that. And we did both. So, but when you talk to the Native people, they're not dumb. They know they can't get all the land back, but they want some. They'd also like an apology. They'd like a good-hearted attempt to say, wow, that whole genocide in 1850 was wrong and taking all your land was wrong. We should try to do something to give back land to you. Or what they're really interested in is access to sacred sites. So even if you own a piece of property legally, if there's a spring on there that's been there for 1,000 years, they want access to that spring, mostly for ceremony. We need to figure that out. There's also been the Reparations Commission here in California. It's stalled. Californians didn't want to pay money, but now there's a Reparations Commission that's looking at just policy changes like better home loans, preferred placement in universities for African American people. I think we would have to do that. The tinge of racism. We never really had full slavery here. We had some from people who came across America. Very few people lived in slavery in California because what would happen is you'd come over here and then there's tons of stories of people walking up to a slave and going, you know, this is an anti-slave state, right? And they go, really? And then they just walk off. There are some examples of people, African Americans, who were brought in against their will from the South, and they would live in a isolated mountain community where they weren't able to talk to anybody. And those people did live out their lives as slaves, and that's wrong and bad. I'm okay with us giving money to everybody, the like 1,000 or 1,300 people who can show they're a descendant of slavery. It's not that much. Additionally, I think we should deal with the discrimination against Black people since the 1960s. I mean, I saw the Rodney King beating, right? I saw Watts. I saw LA. I went to USC after the riots. There's a lot of historical harm there. Are we going to fix racism against Black people in one fell swoop? No. Can we make a gigantic effort to say that as California is moving in, this is the way that we want to go, so that every Black person knows that this is a nation that they can join in and have hope that they can continue to push us in the right direction? Yes. And I think we can do that with the Indigenous and the Latinos and the Asians. Japanese people lost billions of dollars. Most of the wine country was owned by Japanese people. They never got it back after internment. So if you look at the wine industry in California, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. 95% of that belongs to Japanese families. They literally had their property taken when they were put in internment camps. Someone took their property and goes, that's mine now. Ronald Reagan, I'm not complimenting him, did do a good thing in trying to give some money back. It wasn't enough. We need to make a recognition the internment was wrong and the stealing of land was wrong. Same thing with the Chinese. There was a genocide where about 1/5 of the Chinese population of San Francisco was killed in about 2 nights. around 1850. That's a genocide. We need to recognize that. There's also the genocide against the indigenous in the missions. We need to recognize that. It's not going to make things better, but you can't go forward and say, trust me, I'm a decent person, if you never made a heartfelt apology. And if you never said, look, I got $100 a month, I've got to live, but I got about 20 extra bucks, and I'm going to give every last penny to trying to make you whole as best I can. We have to do that. Israel did that. Singapore did that. Many nations, when you want people to join on to the nation state project, you have to tell them it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same garbage you knew from before. Otherwise, you can't get them to gel as a new community. So we will have to address those. It's not going to be the greatest ever, but we've never really addressed discrimination against Black people. We've never really addressed the genocide on the coastal missions. We've never really addressed the genocide from the gold rush. We've never really given land back to the indigenous. We've never really tried to make the Chinese and the Japanese whole. We've never really even apologized to the Latin people who had their votes taken away when America invaded in 1850, and then their property. Most of the Central Coast was owned by Mexican families who literally just had a Caucasian person walk up in 1850 and go, yeah, it's mine. What are you going to do about it? The courts won't recognize you. So we have to address all of that. I'd like us to do an apology to Mariano Viejo, the Mexican governor who tried to help build a diverse California. When the Americans invaded, Viejo tried to get everybody to work together, and they just played him and took his money, and he ended up a poor beggar before he died. He has a house, La Crismontes, up in the Bay Area, but that's about it. Benicia is named after his wife. The guy built the first 4 capitals. We don't talk about that at all. I also think that we'd have to have, when we're talking about an epiphany, the fact is that every California school child has no idea how California became a state. So if you talk to California school children, they're told California State Ascension Day. That's it. They'll be told, here's the day that Congress voted for California to join the Union. And it's a celebration, and yay, that's it. That's all they hear, is that on a certain day, Congress voted for California to join the Union. They have no idea that that's all a lie. So Congress voted for California to join the Union after a military general declared that California was part of America. You won't hear that brought up. There was a dictator, basically. There was a military general installed by America, not with a vote, by force, blew away everybody who disagreed. He was just in charge and goes, yeah, you're part of America now. That's basically Nazi level takeover and dictatorship. That's why they don't teach it. They also don't teach that in California from 1550, about 100 years before any pilgrim ever landed, we were diverse and international trade focused and very tolerant. So from 1550 to 1600, California had Mexicans, El Salvadorans, indigenous people, Jews, French, English, Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, and free sailors from Africa. So we already had Black people, Asian people, Latin people, indigenous people, Jews, and white people from 1550, 100 years before the Pilgrims ever landed. And so when I talk to conservatives and they go, American culture isn't immigration, it isn't diversity, it isn't all these minorities, it isn't foreign people coming here with their foreign ways and keep speaking their foreign language. And they go, American history isn't, but California history is. And our California history is older than yours. So if you get to walk around going, here's what America stands for, I get to go, here's what California stands for. It's the opposite of what you stand for. And ours is more important than yours because we're older than you. Right? This is what conservative Americans say. 400 years, we've been this kind of America. Okay, 500 years, we've been this kind of place. And it's the total opposite of you. We've had immigrants. We've had international trade. We've had people speaking different languages. We've invited all sorts of different people to be here. And we all got along. No, it wasn't perfect. But we've been doing this a century before any pilgrim ever showed up. So this is why I say California culture is wildly different than American culture. Our roots are older. We're not, in America, they have debates on should we have immigration today, right? That's what Trump's about. They have debates on what's the character of America. That's why you're seeing this white Christian nationalist stuff again. We don't have those debates in California. Yeah, look, I'm in Fresno. It's purple. There are some conservatives who say that stuff. But in California, we don't really have debates on Should we have immigrants? Is it okay for people to speak different languages? What about gay people feeling comfortable coming here? What about transgender people? What about somebody who's discriminated in another part of the world for any reason feeling comfortable? We don't have those debates because there's not enough people to say, oh, let's revisit that. Check out America, right? Trump from 2016 to 2025 is because Americans are asking themselves, do we want brown-skinned people here? Do we like it that they speak different languages? How many immigrants should we have? Why are they having a trade war with China? I'm not sure we should be international trade, right? I want more domestic production. I don't want international trade. I don't want these Muslims. I don't want these Mexicans. I don't like these foreign people. You need to speak English, and we're about Christianity and Western values. That's what they're pushing with Trump, right? And the Republican Party. I'm sure many of you saw Stephen Miller's speech when Charlie Kirk died. Watch the Stephen Miller speech when Charlie Kirk died if you want to see what's really going on. It was literally taken from Joseph Goebbels. I am not lying to you. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler, wrote a speech called Light and Darkness. Stephen Miller copied the exact same speech and gave it to all of Republican America after Charlie Kirk on his wake. And there was absolutely no pushback or alarm by any conservative in America. Think about that. Charlie Kirk has a funeral. Let me make it simple. Charlie Kirk has a funeral. I'm not Latino. I'm pure white. I'm here to celebrate Charlie Kirk's. By the way, I want to read this speech I got from Joseph Goebbels, who was the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler. And I'm going to say this live on TV in front of Trump, in front of Erica, in front of Charlie Kirk's fans, in front of Marco Rubio, in front of J.D. Vance, in front of the Republican Party. No one said anything. Nothing. There was no complaints. There was no word. You had to watch liberal videos to see liberals saying you just quoted the propaganda minister of the Third Reich. No one was bothered by that on their side. Totally cool. That's who they are. I mean, I'm sure you've seen J.D. Vance throw his wife. Look, interracial marriage is awesome. I'm a product of interracial marriage. Don't throw your wife under the bus, bro. Your wife's Hindu? People are trash talking her. You'll go on TV and do absolutely nothing to defend your wife? What do you think your kids are going to think when they get older? They're part Hindu. And they're going to see that when racism came for their mother, you as their dad did nothing. Did nothing. How do you think those children are going to feel? I'm half Hindu, and I'm supposed to believe I'm loved in this country, but white supremacists attacked my mom, and my dad, who's vice president, could potentially be president, did nothing. He didn't even try. Will those kids feel like they're actually accepted in America? Or are they going to have two brain cells that work and go, wow, this country hates me and my kind? I mean, they trash talked my mom. My dad was so scared he'd lose power, he did nothing about it. This country hates us. That's what those kids are going to think. And that would never happen in California. If you ran for office in California and your wife was a minority and she got trash talked and you did nothing, I don't care if you're a Republican, you would be done here. Done. And I do know the Republican candidates and I don't back them. But I'm just saying, look at America, look at us. There's certain debates they have over here, we never have. There's certain things they say over there, we never do over here. Look, I'm a fan of Kamala, but when Kamala was here, she never said don't have immigrants. 6 months after being vice president, Joe Biden had her on TV saying to all the immigrants, don't come to America. Why? Because he was the president who was going to heal the soul of the country and bring conservatives and liberals back together. Remember that? 2020, Joe Biden said there'll be a national healing and I'm going to bring the country back together. So they started taking MAGA talking points like, we don't need Mexicans crossing the border. And that's how they got Kamala, for the first time in her 20-year political history, to say something completely out of line with what she said in California. I'm not blaming Kamala. I'm just saying when she ran for president of America or vice president, they probably told her this is what Americans want. They don't like all those immigrants. They kind of like the border wall. We don't do that here. We don't have those discussions. That's why I feel safe here. That's why I love living here. That's why I fight for this place. Because I know as a Latino, do you know it's okay to be racially profiled in America right now? Like that's law. The Supreme Court said that's totally cool. So it is completely legal to be racially profiled for being Latino. I just read a story in New Mexico. They pulled a Native American woman out of her car and were about to deport her to Mexico. She's indigenous. They came here before anyone else. This is her land more than anyone else's. This happened this week, by the way. They go, no, you're a Mexican. We're shipping you. The whole tribe had to basically shut down the roads and call and go, she's not Mexican. I'm Mexican. That's kind of insulting to me. It's okay to racially profile people and ship out of the country. They almost shipped out an indigenous person. By the way, Homeland Security, the governor, and the mayor who were part of that all just wrote it off as simple human error. Nothing to see here. Don't get worked up. Yeah, we almost kicked off indigenous people out of America. By the way, I'm sure you saw where there's almost 200 U.S. citizens who've been disappeared by the Trump administration. That's a fact. Not undocumented immigrants, full-blown U.S. citizens disappeared. Gone. Poof. Where are they? I don't know. Where'd they go? I don't know. They look Mexican, so they're gone. That's cool, right? This is what happened in 2016. When Trump came back and I saw, and look, I like Newsom, but when he came on with Rob Bonta and he's going, we're going to Trump-proof the economy. And I go, in 2016, you said you'd protect undocumented immigrants and 6 died in an unlimited detention private prison that we fought against and couldn't stop. We couldn't stop Trump from unlimited detention. We couldn't stop Trump from taking people. We couldn't stop Trump from having 2/3 of the police and sheriff's departments in California work with ICE. And we couldn't stop them using private prisons. And the result was 6 people are dead. And so when I saw Newsom this time going, we're going to Trump-proof economy, I go, you're going to bring those 6 people back to life? What about the 100,000 people who were locked in unlimited detention? That means you're grabbed off the streets. Your family knows nothing about you. No one's told where you are. You're not listed anywhere in any database. And you just go someplace and you're put around cyclone fencing. And you're told maybe someday you'll get out. Now, true, a lot of them got out a month or 2 later or 2 weeks, but just think about that. You're grabbed off the streets. They don't identify themselves. They don't say where you're going. There's no paperwork, no due process, and you're placed in a room and told, maybe we'll let you go. Anybody see Stalinist Russia? That's what it was. And also think about deprogramming. Okay, so California is saying, oh, look, the courts work. We got the courts to order Trump to back down on everything he did. Yeah, a month after the fact. So I'm a 5-year-old girl, and I get tear gassed, and my mom is taken away from me and disappeared, and my grandfather has his head cracked open with batons. By the way, all this happened in Chicago last week. I'm Latin, so I stay up on all this. I'm supposed to believe that 5-year-old little girl isn't traumatized for life? I can go and tell that 5-year-old little girl, look, I know you saw your grandpa have his head cracked open because he goes, what is this? And they just started beating him in the streets. That's happened. I know your mom was disappeared. I know somebody shot tear gas at you as a 5-year-old. But look, America loves you. Be a good citizen. It's cool. I don't think that person ever gets over that trauma. And I think telling them, hey, the court said it's wrong a month later after your grandpa has permanent brain damage, after you've known 2 weeks without your mom crying every night, after you've gone through tear gas. They're tear gassing children in Chicago, just so everybody knows. They're ramming people with cars in Chicago, and they've already capped a few people in Chicago. What were they doing? They were telling people La Migra is coming. Basically, ICE is coming. That was it. There's something called free speech. They were simply saying, here's this officer, and they're coming in the area. That is completely legal. Completely legal. It was not inciting violence. They didn't say, get your guns and let's get them. They said, ICE is coming. That's it. Look it up. They're ramming those people into cars. They're shooting them. There was one woman they unloaded 5 rounds into. She lived, but I mean, You're a 130-pound woman and they launched 5 bullets into your body because you were telling people ICE is coming? I'm sure you saw where Governor Pritzker, and I'm Cali first, but I believed him when he said, I have to go on TV and ask people to not tear gas children today. Like I'm coming on TV to beg people, please don't tear gas our kids. He had to say that. That's where you live. That trauma's going to go away? I don't think so. Let's take some questions here. I learned that here. Let's see. I'm not going to lie. I was not aware that we were also Hawaii'd into the Union. Yes. Okay. Let's cover that. Thank you. We were Hawaii'd into the Union. Yes. So they don't teach this. This is why I know Calexit would take over. Most people don't know how California was formed. If people in California knew how California was taken, they would be disgusted with being part of America. That's why they don't teach the kids. That's why almost nobody knows this. So real quick, California was independent from Mexico and America. This is something they also won't talk about, for 10 years. You know how Texas loves talking about how they were an independent country? Yeah, we were independent too for the same amount of time, but you'll never hear anybody mention it here. In 1836, Mexico sent up a governor to take over California. The people here chased him back to Mexico. That means defiance under international law. In 1846, Mexico also sent another governor up here, and they chased him back down to Mexico too, which means that California was de facto independent from Mexico for 10 years, 1836 to 1846. If the government that controls you sends an administrator and you have guns and send them packing, that's called a rebellion. You won't hear about it. California, fully independent country, 10 years, as long as Texas. Then America came around 1850 and invaded. Now, you have heard about the Bear Flag Revolution because there was Caucasian people who came in who were part of the invasion of 1850 and said, oh, we're independent. And that only lasted a month. You'll never hear about how California was legitimately independent for 10 years. In 1850, General Fremont and about 200 soldiers from the West, in addition to some naval ships, basically conquered California. They came in, and there was a few battles in the north. There was one in Cahuenga Pass in Los Angeles. Cahuenga Pass in LA was the famous battle. And only about 5 or 7, I'm not even sure anybody died. Like maybe one person died. They basically had 200 troops come down, and there was like 50 Californios, and they just kept shooting bullets at them, and they left because they were all going to die. And they went down to LA and did the same thing. And then there was a place in the Bay Area where they had naval ships come. And so the Navy and the Army both shot at the California. So 1850, the American military invades California. They gun down anybody who's disagreeing. It was not a peaceful revolution. They came with guys with bayonets and guns and cannons and shot everything up. Okay. People capitulated because they didn't want to all die. Now, men at that time would be willing to take about 10% losses. We're looking at 90% losses. Nobody does that. So when they took over in 1849, 1850, they immediately went to work on undoing the nature of California. So 1849, they come in. By 1852, all Latinos who had the ability to vote basically had lost the right to vote. So Latin people, you had the right to vote, wiped out, gone. This is in a 3-year period, 1849 to 1852. Black people were introduced to segregation in 1852 in California. Never existed in California ever. 1852. The American invaders got here 1849. Within 3 years, they introduced segregation. 1852. Asian people were called celestials by this group of Americans, meaning they came from the celestial heavens, meaning they weren't even humans. Yes, so racist white people who came in America, from America, and invaded California did not view Asian people as human beings. They were called celestials. They literally felt because of their face, they must be alien beings from a foreign planet. I'm not making this up. Okay, so they weren't even human beings. That's why in 1850, you could kill off 1/5 of the Chinese population in San Francisco in 2 nights. That would typically be called a genocide by world standards. Additionally, all their property was taken. So you own property, it's gone. So within 3 years, if you're black, you're segregated. If you're Latin, you have no vote. If you're Asian, all your property's gone. Also, indigenous people, they started the gold rush and genocide. And the California government from 1849 to 1855 has receipts. Basically, the government said, if you go and kill an Indian person, an indigenous person, and bring us their chopped off head, we'll give you $1. Because they wanted to kill all of the indigenous off in California. So we had a genocide that was Nazi level organization. There's actually receipts that are still available online. I have a screen print of them. And it's literally like one adult, so much money, one child. So you got so much money for an adult male head, so much for a woman's head, and then so much for a child's head. They paid money for children's chopped off heads and for women's chopped off heads and men's chopped off heads. Of indigenous from 1849 to 1850, this was the Americans. Now, if you talk to school children here, they're going to be told 1850 something Congress voted for California to join America. Done. That's it. What about the segregation? The conscious genocide, the chopped off heads, the receipts for that, the Asian people massacred, the genocide there in San Francisco, the removal of land, the removal of territory, the removal of respect, the removal of votes. Nothing. They don't know any of it. And I think that's why Calexit would happen. If Californians actually knew that California being part of America meant every single minority had to be trashed for the next 100 years, basically until the 1960s we started getting out of it, I don't think they'd be thrilled. Secondly, do you know what California joining America allowed America to do? Keep slavery alive for another 15 years. So if you look up the Compromise of 1850, what they said was, oh, I know, if we allow California in as a state, the South will agree to not gerrymander some districts. And so basically they were able to keep the slavery arrangement alive till the Civil War. So California joining the American Union specifically allowed the institution of slavery to exist another 15 years when it would not have. What's there to be proud and happy about joining America on that? You kept slavery alive and you committed genocide and segregation and murder and theft and mayhem and rape. And that's how it is. Oh, and then there was 5 military generals who were ordered to control California. And the 5th one just said, yeah, you're a state. So technically we were a state by dictatorship. All that's wiped out. All you hear about is the congressional vote after all that happened. And that's all anybody knows. Imagine a California where everyone in California knew that history. Honestly, this is a question to you guys. Do you think Californians would be proud of being part of America if they knew all the history I just told you? Yeah, we kept slavery alive another 15 years. Hundreds of thousands of people killed and in bondage. And we brought in segregation and racial discrimination and genocide and rape. And nobody's going to be cool with that. That's why no one knows. That's why they don't teach it. They don't even teach college kids this stuff when you take a California history class. They'll start with John Muir and all the nice, pretty stuff. We were absolutely Hawaii'd. And who was the guy who, only one person brought this up, and it was like a new mayor candidate for New York brought it up. Okay, let's take a, Daniel says I was not aware of that. Oh, Laura says I was not aware of that. Speech was scary. Yep. That's what okay. All right, here's another question. Let's do this. And ask questions. We will take them. So go to the public comments. Thank you, Cat 1754. I wonder if that's Catalan. It's time for Californians to be proud of being Californians, if anything else, no matter the political status, drawing from the Quebecois or Puerto Rican subnational identities. That's right. Puerto Ricans are part of America, but they have a national identity. So do the Quebecois. They're not technically independent, but they have a very national identity, independent from Canada. Great point. Cat 1754, please keep mentioning that. Now let's go to this comment here. Here's another question from the people in the studio. Ask questions. We'll address all of them. We're going to have to do military buildup and get a lot of international support 5 to 10 years after we leave. Once America realizes how the scales work, freedom isn't free. It's still true. So just a couple things. One is California is going to ask for permission. And because Republicans hate our guts and don't like us around, they're going to be fine to let us go. And one thing I always say is, if someone's kicking you in the butt on the door on the way out of the house and saying never come back, do you really need to be worried about them coming and grabbing you again? They didn't want you. They kicked you out. They literally said good riddance. And you legally asked them for the right to leave. So it was all legal, all agreed upon, and I don't think they'd want it back. But if they did, California is the world's 4th largest economy, even when it was the world's 6th largest economy. If you took the amount of money that California puts into the U.S. military right now, that amount money of just California's portion to the U.S. military budget, larger than the combined Russian military budget. I want to repeat that. Just the California budget portion of the American Defense Fund is larger than the entire Russian military budget. Russia is now the #1 military contender to the U.S. Zircon, hypersonics, other nuclear missiles. They actually stalled out NATO. NATO's losing Ukraine. So they could challenge all of NATO and all of America, and we'd actually have more money than them. So if they get to be powerful military, how come we couldn't? Secondly, what makes the U.S. military powerful? Is it just raw troops? Well, that's not correct. North Korea has more soldiers than the U.S. military. So does China by far. Russia has more active duty trained combat troops than the U.S. military. What makes the American military powerful is they have jet fighters, missiles, satellites. They can spy on terrorists and shoot a missile down, and they can send in a Black Hawk that's undetected by satellites of any country, and they can the Gerald Ford can sail up. It's an aircraft carrier. No other country really has an aircraft carrier. That's all tech. That's all tech. America does not say, hey, we were going to launch 100,000 troops in your country. You better watch out. What they say is we'll have jet fighters and bombs and satellites, and we can just shut off your communications thing. Look at Iran. They shut down their security grid. You shut off their internet. That's all tech. Where do you think most of the engineers for the military come from out of 50 states? Take a wild guess. What one state produces more military technology engineers than any other state out of 50? It's us in California. That's right. I'll also remind you of something called Bill Clinton. So after the Cold War ended, they closed down a bunch of military bases. It was called BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure. Happened in the 1990s. They closed a ton of military bases in California. Guess what? We were fine. The Pentagon also had to do a research paper. And what they admitted was, we asked a bunch of the Californians, hey, you're going to lose your military job. You better move with us to Nevada or Oklahoma or Louisiana, where we're moving our militaries to. And they said, nah, I'll just get another job here in California. So if you read the Pentagon papers of the base realignment and closure process after action report, when they were closing more American bases than the U.S. had ever seen, they had to admit they desperately needed California engineers, and yet Californians felt no compunction to have to work for them. Now, I'll stay in California, I'll get another job. And then they said, oh no, we can't do that. Turns out we do need advanced missiles that are smarter than anything China and Russia has, and jets, and aircraft carriers, and satellites, and reconnaissance systems, and internet systems, and tracking systems, and all the stuff. And most of that comes from us. So when California is independent, we're going to be partners. We want to look, the way JJ puts it is 5 seconds after California declares independence, the governor's going to say we're part of NAFTA and now we're part of NATO. No trade embargoes, no travel embargoes. Defense, not an issue. We're part of NATO. France, Germany, and England already know California as a separate place. You can look at the political articles called The President of California, Jerry Brown. First time Trump came, he backed out of climate change. Jerry Brown traveled to Europe, and Politico magazine had to admit this. And this goes back to Obama. The Germans, the French, and the English had 3 times the delegates come and meet the California governor as they did the American president for 4 years. So president flies into a foreign country. You're supposed to have your top foreign dignitaries and like translators and flower girls meet him. California had 3 times the amount of dignitaries meeting our governor during the entire Trump presidency that Trump ever had, from Germany, France, and England. What that means is those 3 countries recognize us as separate from America. By the way, this goes back to Obama. When Obama signed the climate change accord, he did that in Paris, France. Paris, France had 2 tables, one for Obama and one for California. I'm not making that up. The French government, on their own, talking about climate change, made 1 table for America with Obama and 1 table for California, totally separate table. When Trump came along, they treated us as a separate country with 3 times more love. So when we're independent, we can go to them and say, hey, you remember us? You treated us as a foreign country already? Yeah, we want to be in NAFTA and NATO. Okay, done. You don't want the world's 4th largest economy part of your economic bloc when China's about to replace the US dollar? They would never do that. So we're bigger than Russia. The US military desperately depends on us for the edge that gives them that edge, which is why they'd want to be partners with us, and we could easily join NATO. Secondly, what state has the highest number of active duty combat troops who call it home, combat tested veterans, and veterans overall? California. We have about 1 million more than Texas. Everybody thinks Texas is pro-war. Yeah, but California's just huge. Okay. We have the most number of combat trained active duty soldiers, the most number of combat trained veterans, and the most number of veterans total by far, any state. Now, not more than America, but we have a lot of veterans. We have the tech. The U.S. military needs us, and we'd already be larger than most nations. So there really isn't a military issue there. Let's take another question. We would be part of NATO. NATO would definitely be happy to have us. NATO is getting their patoot kicked. They've lost a lot of their arms for the Ukraine war. They thought it was going to be wrapped up in a few months. It's 4 years later. So I'm sure I'll point out to everybody, when Israel was having the war with the Palestinians this past year, there was a news headline, artillery shells going to Ukraine are rerouted to Israel. That was public news. Why'd that happen? Because they didn't have any more. They ran out. The big, bad, powerful American military ran out of artillery shells and had to publicly admit, we can't fight 2 wars. We can either fight in Ukraine or we can help the Israelis, but we can't do both. They publicly said that. They redirected shipments because they didn't have enough. Okay, Europe is out of arms. Why do you think Trump made the arrangement to sell them arms that they would give to Ukraine? Because they don't have any more. NATO's used up all their arms. America's used up all our arms. So NATO would be happy to have a country that's the world's 4th largest economy with more combat trained vets than any of them have join, and technological superiority. It would be stupid for them not to want us. So I think we definitely get it. I don't even think it'd take more than a second. 3 times is significant. Yes, no wonder Trump hates that. Yeah. I heard about Cali's recognition internationally, but I've got to go. Okay, see you later, Daniel. Cali is recognized internationally. It's not officially called a nation, but if you look at some other things, you can kind of see where it's basically a nation. So Gavin Newsom has called California a nation state, straight up. And people loved it. He did it on Rachel Maddow. When Trump was president and we had COVID, Gavin got together and said, we're going to ignore anything the federal government tells us regarding COVID. We're going to have our own doctors group with Oregon and Washington. And then right after he said that, telling Rachel Maddow, he goes, and we're a nation state. So why do you say I defy the federal government? We're going to ignore the federal government. By the way, we're a nation state. Unless he was feeling it. Jerry Brown before him called California a nation state 5 times. Jerry Brown, the governor before him, went to Ireland and said, I'm just joking, but if we had Ireland's financial revenue, we could be independent. Just joking. Jerry Brown met the Chinese government and said, when it comes to climate change, you should consider us a totally foreign country from America. Why is he telling the Chinese government and the Irish government we're separate from America and could be independent? And then he's making a joke about how we're a nation state. 5 times, Jerry Brown. Then Governor Schwarzenegger also called California a nation state twice. So why did the past 3 governors all call California a nation state? There is no other governor who says that in America. Secondly, why did Schwarzenegger, Brown, and Newsom also do this thing where they sign trade deals with foreign countries and treaties on climate change? They're called memorandums of understanding, but they're basically treaties. So our governors are signing treaties with other countries and subgovernments on climate change and trade deals. That's something only presidents do. Secondly, why did France in the 2015 Paris Climate Accord put out a separate table for California and a separate table for America? Why did Politico write an article when Jerry Brown was governor saying President of the Independent Republic of California and talk about how France, England, and other European countries had 3 times the amount of people come out to meet us as for Donald Trump? Maybe it's because our governors know that we're basically an independent country. I mean, you're signing trade deals and treaties with foreign countries. That's something a head of state does. You're calling it a nation state. You're joking about how we could be independent. Really? I think they're already there. Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, thank you, Laura. Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So, Governor Newsom made cheaper deals for medical supplies. What did he say when he did that? America's still screwing around with the cost of insulin and with some other stuff. So we in California are just going to go ahead and get it done. That's independent nation talk. America can't get this done. So in California, we went ahead and just did it. I'll remind you what Governor Newsom said with COVID. We're not going to follow what Trump says. We're going to do our own thing. And we acted like a nation because we used the power of our nation state, is what he said, and approached the Chinese government to buy medical supplies directly. So California went and using its purchasing power and only negotiating on its own with China, bought supplies independent just for California, not for America, just for us. And the governor said we acted like a nation state when we did it. So now here's the same governor saying, America's falling apart. Remember, Gavin Newsom said there may not be an election in 2028. He said that 2 months ago. There may not be an election in 2028. He's not sure that the midterms won't be rigged and that Trump won't steal the election in 2028. So right after he says there may not be democracy in America, he also says, by the way, we got our own cheaper medical supplies. That sounds like somebody who's positioning California to be independent and showing that California can actually thrive as an independent country. If you're an American and you want cheaper medical supplies and all you've heard is debate, and then in California they go, by the way, we just did it. Who looks like the functioning country? So I'm telling you, Newsom is straight up hinting at this. He doesn't know that the climate's ripe, but I mean, everybody saw him when he went on Colbert, right? And he said, we may not have a democracy in 2028. Here you go. This shocked me. I don't think this gets enough attention. He's on the Colbert Show, September. Donald Trump is trying to rig the midterm elections. I fear that we will not have an election in 2028. Sitting governor, we may not have elections in America. If I said that, I would be called a crazy radical in 2016. Governor says it on TV a few months ago. Everybody's like, yep, makes sense. So when I add that, and then we have this, last competent president of America, California, the whole nation is counting on you. Prop 50 was the thing. So Newsom was talking about how they may rig the elections with Texas. So we did Prop 50 to fight back. They got Obama. He said the whole country's counting on you. Does that sound like a stable country where the governor says we may not have elections in 2028 and the last competent president says, California, if you, one state, can't win this one election, all of America's over. When you're seeing competent political leaders say things like, it's over, the country may not have, does that sound like a stable place to be in? That's what I'm saying. Yep, it helps people to know that we can do it alone. That's exactly right, Laura. I think that's what Newsom did. So Newsom is a career politician, and I'm not saying that to as a diss. They are very aware of what they say and what it could be taken. As a career politician, you have to be aware of what you're saying and how it'll be received by the public at all times. Otherwise, you're not really good at your job. So you're Newsom, and you're not ready to say Calexit. Okay, you're not ready. So what do you say? Boy, America might not last 4 years from now. It could be gone. I'm really worried there may not be a country. Oh, by the way, is America debating about cheap medical supplies over 2 presidential administrations? Yeah, we just went ahead and got it done. And I said those 2 things within weeks of each other. So I'm a politician. I don't choose words randomly. I don't say things randomly. I don't say I back Calexit. What I say is America's dead in 4 years, and then I show you how California can do things better than America within 2 weeks after that. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm a career politician. You're not ready, or I'm not sure the ground is ready for me to say I back Calexit. So what I'll say is America's dead. And then I'll say we're a nation state. And then I'll say we can do things better than them. And I'll say we can operate independently. Where do you think the California mind is going to go? Like, if you just heard that, where do you naturally go? Well, we better do it on our own because we're not going to be attached. This ship we're attached to is sinking. Good thing we can do it on our own. Do you see how often Governor Newsom talks about how we may stop paying federal taxes? By the way, that's a felony. He's suggesting a felony. I like the guy, but he's suggesting a felony. I'm not criticizing him, but it is. Why is he saying that? Why is he suggesting a felony? You can't even stop paying taxes. Why is he saying that? Because it allows him to bring up that we don't financially need the federal government at all. He can't come out and say, we don't need America for policy help. We can do it all on our own. We don't need America for money. We can do it all on our own. So what does he say? Look, I got us cheap medicine when they can't. By the way, we lose billions of dollars being part of this thing. We don't make any money being part of it. But I didn't say Calexit. I just used Calexit talking points. That's why I pick up on this. We've been saying that stuff. He's been pointing out that we're a donor state, that we're milked financially, that the democratic system is rigged and destroyed in America. Those are all our talking points the last 10 years. Now he's using them this year. Random chance coincidence? Or he has 2 eyes? All right, another question? It helps people to know that we could. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. And so Governor Newsom, the thing I want Governor Newsom to hear is, look, I know you want to be president of America, but there isn't going to be an America. And people want you to be president of California. And they believe that you could pull it off. And while there's 30 or 45 presidents of America, there's only a few people who actually found nations. Who can name all the presidents in America? Almost no one. What American doesn't know the name of George Washington? Almost no one. See the difference? 45 presidents, most Americans can't name any of them, but every single person in America knows who George Washington was. That could be you. You could be another president on top of a sinking ship that's failing and sinking, and then you'll try to make it look as good as it can. Like when Obama became president, it's not a coincidence that America was in the Iraq War and everybody hated it, and they were in the worst recession. That's when they let an African-American man be in charge. Because they go, this ship's sinking. Here, you could have it. And he was really competent, but how much grief did Obama get? He was dealing with a recession. He was dealing with the Iraq War. These are really tough problems. And he did as best he could, but even then, shackled to some big problems. Obama didn't look super great handling both of those. I don't blame him. I think there were tough, bad situations, and he did the best he could. If I give you a house and it's on fire, and you're the best fireman, can I really expect you to put the fire out and rebuild the whole house? No, I can expect you to kind of put half of it out. We got Obama. We got the best caretaker we could have in a super bad situation. And so I'm saying, Newsom, you're going to run into the same thing. You're going to run into a ship that's sinking. The engine doesn't work. The steering doesn't work. The lights are out. Power's intermittent, and you want to sail across the ocean. Why? You could be part of the world's fourth largest economy. Do you know how nations would react when we're independent? They would love it. You could build this country. Thank you, Laura. Here's another question. So there's a couple ways to look at this. Traditionally, when a country leaves, normally what happens is they take their proportion of the debt. So if you're 13% of the country, when you leave, you take 13% of the debt. Roughly, that's normally the way that it has happened in the last couple hundred years. There's no law saying that has to happen. For example, when Ukraine left the Soviet Union, they didn't take any of the debt. They just left. And the Soviet Union signed on to that. So you don't have to. I think California would take on its proportion of the debt just so that the financial markets and the business class and the money system would think that we're fair. You're becoming independent. That's radical. You don't want to scare capital markets. So you're like, look, we're going to do everything on the up and up, totally negotiated. They want us to take 13% of the debt. America said, fine, we just did it. Okay. Here's the great news. California has a lower debt ratio than America today. So when people go, oh, California, you'd be in debt. You can't be a nation. I go, well, then America can't exist because America has a worse debt ratio than California right now. So if we don't exist because of debt, America doesn't exist. Also, Japan, France also have worse debt ratios than California. They get to be independent countries. No one says anything. When we take the debt, we'll still have a better debt ratio than America. I also think we can get better finance terms for this reason. When Donald Trump started a trade war with the entire planet, he kind of pissed off everybody, including the Europeans and the Chinese who finance most of the debt market here in America, along with Americans. We didn't do that. I think that we could go and get better capital relations with China and Europe because we're not Trump and we didn't offend them. Additionally, America's lost its AAA credit rating twice, I think. We've never lost our AAA credit rating. So in 1945, when they created the US dollar in the Bretton Woods Conference, as we understand it today, they ranked the viability of your dollars. And like 1A is the worst, 2A is okay, AAA is like a nation state, France, England, Germany, America. America already lost that. It was under Obama. I don't blame him. I blame the Republicans, but it still happened. And then you can't pass a budget longer than anybody else has. You have these trade wars with everybody. The American dollar is not in a good position, and nobody really has a lot of financial confidence in America anymore. California does, and it could easily do that. Okay, we're winding down. Let me show you. This is one of my favorite pictures. So this is Marcy Shore. Marcy Shore is one of the top experts in fascism in America. There's about 3 or 5. She's one of the top 5 fascism experts. I think she teaches at Princeton. She lives in Canada now. So when Trump started cracking down on universities and arresting professors for what they said, she left. Now, top expert in totalitarianism in America left because she says, I see where this is going. And what does she say? Well, my friends and colleagues, they were walking around saying, we have checks and balances, so let's inhale checks and balances, exhale. And I thought, my God, they don't get it. What she's talking about is that she was saying fascism is coming. Fascism is coming. And all of her other experts were like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And she said, oh, my God, we're on the Titanic and we're saying our ship can't sink. That's a Calexit talking point. America's falling apart. The ship's going to sink. We're going down. There's people still playing, the band's still playing music and people still want to dance. We've been saying that for years. Here's the top expert in totalitarianism saying the same thing. So we'll end it there. Want to say thanks to everybody, and we will talk to you soon.